Happy Vesak. Hope all of you are safe and well and you're comfortably staying at home during this MCO. I think we all know that we are living in really unsettling times with the coronavirus pandemic. We can see its effects spreading to every aspect of our lives, and we are all having to cope with stress and uncertainty. But maybe sometimes when you think of it, maybe our fear, our panic, and our anxiety seems to spread even more rapidly than the virus itself. For today's Vesak sharing, I would like to explore some Buddhist teachings, particularly those from the Pali Suttas, that can help us deal with the issue of fear, anxiety, and uncertainty in our daily lives, so that with these teachings in mind, we can live with awareness, compassion, and wisdom. I think this is very pertinent today. One of the things we need to understand is that in life, we must overcome obstacles and challenges in order to grow. Sometimes the circumstances are so huge that we may think that it's insurmountable, like the pandemic now. But the Buddha taught us that we can calm our minds, we can see things more clearly, and we can actually turn our challenges into opportunity. Uncertainty and change are actually realities of our existence. And thinking that things should be otherwise only adds unnecessary fear to our lives. This is where we create suffering. The Buddha said aging, illness, separation from our loved ones, and death are to be expected, to be understood, and to be acknowledged. In fact, because of this, he gave us a very important teaching, which is for us to contemplate 5 things every day. And this is found in the Upajjhatthana Sutta, in the Book of Gradual Sayings, Book of 5, Sutta 57. I am subject to aging, have not gone beyond aging. I am subject to illness, have not gone beyond illness. I am subject to death, have not gone beyond death. I will grow different, separate from all that is dear and appealing to us. And I am the owner of my actions, heir to my karma. So these 5 things that we contemplate each day: aging, illness, our death, separation, and our own actions. So these are the 5 things that the Buddha reminds us that it is very important for us to contemplate. But contemplating on these 5 things does not mean that we don't take care of our old age or we are careless with our health. It definitely doesn't mean being irresponsible with our precious human life that we have inherited. What it means is that we must understand its natural characteristics and its nature to change. In fact, when we study the 5 contemplations which the Buddha gave us, it actually helps us to let go and not cling to something that is of the nature to change, like our very existence itself. So if we do that, we transform our mind in a way that we experience inner peace and clarity instead of worry and fear. We are grateful that today there's a new science of neuroplasticity, which actually says that our mind is malleable and can be molded. So this means that we can actually transform our negative emotions or thoughts into positive ones. We can transform our fear into confidence, our worry into faith. So they are all subject to change. So likewise, our negative emotions, our fear, our worries, our uncertain thoughts, they can all be transformed thanks to this law or this new discovery which science calls neuroplasticity. So if we worry or fear the pandemic, actually it won't make the virus goes away. In fact, what we should do is to do what's required for us to do and accept it and then let it go. In the 8th century, there was this great Indian master named Shantideva who says, if a problem can be solved, why worry? If the problem cannot be solved, worrying about it is not going to solve any problems. It's not going to go away. So when the reality is such, we just have to let go. Ajahn Chah, as you all have heard, has this wonderful saying: if you let go a little, you will have a little happiness. If you let go a lot, you will have a lot of happiness. If you let go completely, you'll be free. So this brings us to the point of how to have wise reflection. In fact, in another very important discourse called the Sava Sutta, which is found in the book of Middle Lang Seng, Sutta number 2, the Buddha compares the difference between having what is called wise reflection and an unwise reflection. He says, for one who contemplates wisely anxieties and troubles that have not yet arisen do not arise, and those that have already arisen will cease. Likewise, for one who does not contemplate wisely, anxieties and troubles that have not yet arisen will arise, and those that have already arisen will continue to increase. So these two paragraphs are very important teachings for us to contemplate from the Sabbasava Sutta. It basically tells us that mindfulness is something we should cultivate in our daily life. Because with mindfulness, we learn to accept and to let go. But it does not mean that we are reckless or careless. So we do what we can. We are mindful, for example, in today's situation, not to get infected. And likewise, we do not infect others. So to protect others from the virus, we need to protect ourselves first. In fact, there's an interesting story in the Siddhaka Sutta, which the Buddha talks about two acrobats. It says, if an acrobat balancing on a bamboo pole, he needs to be very mindful and focused, because one moment of distraction or carelessness is going to fall to the ground. So the safety of the acrobat's assistant in the meantime also depends on the master being focused and mindful. So ultimately, we are responsible for our own balance. And it will be foolish to direct our attention to others while we neglect our inner focus. The story of this acrobat is found in the Siddhaka Sutta is that the well-being of others starts with us. So if we are mindful and diligent not to be infected by the virus to the best of ability, then we are helping to prevent the spread of the infection in our community. And how do we do that in today's environment? It requires a lot of mindfulness for us to wash our hands regularly, for us to avoid touching our face, our eyes, our nose, our mouth with our unwashed hands. It's very important for us to be mindful, to remember to use a tissue when we cough or sneeze. And if we don't have a tissue, for us to cough into our sleeves. So we keep a safe distance from people around us, social distancing. Now, all this calls for mindfulness. If we are not mindful, we tend to forget doing all these things. The future is unknown. Nobody knows when COVID-19 virus will disappear. So it is useless to speculate about it and continue to live in fear or worry. If we think back, if we just reflect on our thoughts, we tend to not only worry about the future, but we also cling to the past. And our mind is rarely in the present moment. There's a term used, and it is called mind wandering, where we continue to cling onto the past and to worry what's going to happen to the future. We ask, how I miss going out with friends, how I miss my favorite food, how I miss going to my favorite restaurants. Why did I make those investments in the past? Why did I pay for the flight ticket so early? So our mind keep on playing back what happens in the past. Or we start thinking about the future. Oh, how many people will die? What will happen to my job? Will I get infected if I go out? If I forget my mask, will I get infected? What happens if my loved ones are infected? When can I travel again? So we keep on filling our minds with thoughts of the past and thoughts of the future. Very, very seldom do we think about the present. In fact, the Buddha says we should live in the present. And he gave a very inspiring, very important discourse called the Bhattikarata Sutta, which is usually translated as a live now. It's a collection of verses. Let me just read to you those verses. The verses go as follows. Let not a person revive the past, or on the future build his hopes. For the past has been left behind, and the future has not yet been reached. Instead, with insight, let him see each presently arisen state. Let him know that, and be sure of it, invincibly, unshakably. Today, the effort must be made. Tomorrow, death may come. Who knows? No bargain with mortality can keep him and his hordes away. But one who dwells thus ardently, relentlessly, by day and by night, has truly had an auspicious day. So says the peaceful sage. From the Bhaddikarata Sutta. This is from the Book of Middle Langsing, Sutta 131. So by understanding the importance of this discourse, reminds us that it is so important for us to focus on what is right now, the present moment itself. So what to do now? Worrying is not the solution and only make matters worse. Being in the now is much more beneficial for you, for your loved ones, and for society. Being present and mindfully following the safety measures by our Ministry of Health, for example, is the best thing you can do right now, rather than worrying about the future or worrying about the past. So far, we have talked about the 5 daily contemplations or the 5 daily reflections. We have talked about the importance to accept or learn the importance of acceptance and not denial, the importance of letting go, about being mindful, and about living in the present. But these are all very important things that we should develop, we should cultivate. But at the same time, if we understand Buddhist teachings, we are also all interrelated. We are all interdependent. Because our actions affect others, as we mentioned in the Seneca Sutta itself, even though we start by protecting ourselves. For those of you who are familiar with Chinese Buddhism or Mahayana Buddhism, you have heard of the Avatamsaka Sutra, Huayan Jing, right? Where the famous jewel net of Indra, that is perhaps the epitome of explaining the concept of interdependency. But even in the Pali Canon, if you remember, in the Upada Sutta, once Ananda, who was very inspired from his meditation, came to see the Buddha. And he said to the Buddha, "Oh Master, I think I've discovered half the holy life comprises of friendship." And what did the Buddha reply? "Oh Ananda, this holy life is not only half of it comprising friendship, the entire holy life comprises friendship." And friendship means that we have to deal with people. We have to deal with others. We treat other people as friends. That is why we have this word called kalyanamitas. Yes, we treat everybody as spiritual friends. So that's the important point that we have to understand. We live in an interconnected world. Our actions will affect others, just as others' actions will affect us. Right? So this is the importance of. So when we look at the Upada Sutta, which the Buddha gave to Ananda, it's not just about friendship per se, but it's about how friendship operates in an interconnected environment in society today. So while we have talked early on about the importance of daily contemplations of the 5 things, we have talked about acceptance and letting go rather than denial. We have talked about live now. So now we should talk about what we should do in our relationship with others as we live in society. So instead of just worrying and being anxious, let's connect with others with kindness and compassion. Because fear will lead to unkind, egoistical, prejudicial, and racist views, and sometimes even violent behavior. So now is the time to think not only about ourselves, but also about others. Time we move gear from me to we. To understand the importance of this interconnectedness that we all live in this world, the Buddha talks about what is called the 4 sublime states, or the 4 Brahma Viharas. And the Buddha talks about the 4 Brahma Viharas in many, many discourses. The most famous, of course, the Brahma Vihara Sutta itself, in the book of Gradual Sayings, book of 10, Sutta 208. And even in the Tevijja Sutta, when the Buddha was talking to the Brahman Vaseta, he also talks about the importance of developing the 4 Brahma Viharas. So we can see a consistency in the Buddha's teachings in the Pali Canon about the importance of understanding and practicing the 4 sublime states. So what are these 4 sublime states, which we call Brahma Viharas? They are usually translated as loving kindness, metta, which is Pali, or Maitri in Sanskrit, compassion, karuna, sympathetic joy, mudita, and equanimity, upekkha, or upeksha in Sanskrit. So they are called Brahma Viharas. Now the word Brahma is used because this is the abode of the gods, called Brahmas. And what is unique about the Brahmas is that they have such divine qualities of loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. So we try to emulate those qualities. And these 4 qualities of mind that alleviate suffering we experience in our everyday life, and to feel more connected to others. So this brings us again to questions of interdependence. So let's look at the first one, which is loving kindness, or metta. The word metta has been translated as loving kindness, but sometimes I think was it Bhante Gunaratana who translated it as friendliness. So you can also use the word friendliness, right? From the word mitta, friend. When we have loving kindness, when we develop loving kindness, we cultivate this wish for everyone to be happy, to be well and peaceful. Now that includes yourself, a loved one, an enemy, as well as someone neutral. So it is an inclusive mental quality. When we radiate our thoughts with such noble qualities in our mind, we too become calm and tranquil. So how do we do that? Very basic practice is, first we radiate to ourselves. May I be well and happy. May I be free from mental suffering. May I be free from physical suffering. May I be well and happy. Then we direct our thoughts of kindness to our family, to our friends. And we say, may you be well and happy. May you be free from mental suffering. May you be free from physical suffering. May you be well and happy. We can even radiate love, loving kindness to someone neutral, an acquaintance. Perhaps someone that you just met at a grocery store. Just pay for your grocery. Someone that you recognize but you don't really know. Someone neutral. May you be well and happy. May you be free from mental suffering. May you be free from physical suffering. May you be well and happy. And maybe today you can even add in, may you be free from the COVID-19 virus. And what about someone you have also known not to like them? Again, you radiate the loving kindness to them. So our thoughts of loving kindness in that sense is called boundless. We do not choose and say, oh, I don't like my neighbor, I'm not going to radiate loving kindness to him. So we radiate loving kindness to all beings, to all sentient beings. All right? So it is an inclusive quality in that sense. The second one is compassion. Now what is compassion? The Pali word is karuna. Compassion can be described as an aspiration, a state of mind, wanting others to be free from suffering. So if loving kindness is the wish for other beings to be well and happy, compassion is that aspiration, that wanting other sentient beings, other people to be free from suffering. But it's not passive. It is not just empathy alone. It is rather, you can say, emphatic truism that actively strives to free other people from suffering. It is said that genuine compassion must have both wisdom and loving kindness. That is to say, one must understand the nature of the suffering from which to free others from. and that is wisdom. And one must experience deep intimacy and sympathy with other sentient beings, and that is loving kindness. So for compassion to be effective, we need to have both wisdom as well as loving kindness. In fact, in the Buddhist teachings, compassion and wisdom have always been seen like the two wings of a bird. Without wisdom, you can't fly. Without compassion, you can't fly. So a bird needs two wings. So you need wisdom, you need compassion. I think one of the best ways for us to visualize compassion is the image of Guan Yin. In Sanskrit, it's called Avalokiteshvara. The very word itself, Avalokiteshvara, means the Lord who looks down, or one who hears the sound of the world. So it's very similar to Kuan Yin, one who hears the sound of the world. Right? So even if you don't believe that Kuan Yin exists, it doesn't matter. What is important is, what does Kuan Yin represent? Kuan Yin represents compassion. So the question is, do we want to cultivate compassion? Is that the Buddhist quality? Is that the quality extolled by the Buddha? Yes, it is. So irrespective of whether you believe there's Guan Yin, there's no Guan Yin, but what Guan Yin means? Guan Yin means compassion. So let us be like Guan Yin. Let us be a manifestation of compassion. So that's the true meaning of Guan Yin in that sense. And how do we practice compassion in daily life? His Holiness the Dalai Lama says that we can make a very complicated, a very complex topic like compassion, we can make it simple by starting small, starting simple. He says, let me quote, he says, every morning when you wake up, have this thought in your mind. Today, I'm fortunate to have woken up. I'm alive. I have a precious human life. I'm not going to waste it. I'm going to use all my energies to develop myself, to expand my heart out to others, to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of others. I'm going to have kind thoughts towards others. I'm not going to get angry or think badly about others. I'm going to benefit others as much as I can. So His Holiness advised it. Every morning when we wake up, if we can, try to remember the short verses, mentally recall, mentally recollect it. Then we'll start our day with a compassionate thought, that aspiration that we talked about. Okay? So it's a very important calling. So something that we can definitely cultivate. So we cultivate compassion both for ourselves and for others, because responding with compassion to our own suffering gives rise to compassion for others. The famous American Tibetan nun, Pema Chodron, says, sorrow has the exact same taste for all of us. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, all sentient beings want happiness. Who doesn't want happiness? So let us not be a cause for the pain and suffering of other sentient beings. Thich Nhat Hanh says, when our left hand is injured, our right hand takes care of it right away. It doesn't stop to say, oh, that's my left hand, should I take care of it? Or am I taking care of you? And you're benefiting from my compassion? No. We see everything as a whole, not as separate entities. So that's again the meaning of we are all interrelated. So that's the second of the four sublime states called compassion. The third sublime state is joy. It's called mudita. Joy here has two aspects. One is joy within ourselves, and joy when we know that others are happy or are joyful. So we also feel joy, or as we say, we rejoice in the happiness of others. So it comes in two aspects. So while many people seem to think that Buddhism is pessimistic, or the Buddha was a pessimist because he starts his teaching with the Four Noble Truths, but people fail to realize that what is really important is actually the Fourth Noble Truth. Because the Fourth Noble Truth, which is actually the Eightfold Path, tells us how do we get out of suffering. And getting out of suffering means how to find happiness. In fact, in the very first teaching the Buddha gave, in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, the Buddha says, only one thing do I teach, dukkha and how to overcome dukkha, which means how to find happiness. And with happiness, we have joy. So what is this sympathetic joy? So it is an happiness in ourselves. In other words, we recognize that here we are. We have this precious human life. There's a lot to be joyful about, precious human life. In fact, His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, there's something wonderful about our negative emotions. And that is, our negative emotions are temporary. They can be transformed. They can be overcome. So we rejoice. But we can also rejoice in the kindness and good deeds of others. When we hear about people donating money to fight the virus, giving free meals to the homeless, or doctors and nurses on the front line, we can rejoice. So that's mudita. The final one is called equanimity. Now, equanimity is a mental quality of inner balance and steadiness that is imbued with awareness, care, and compassion. It is said that it has got mindfulness at its base, and it is also the basis for all the other three sublime states: loving kindness, compassion, and equanimity. What is very important to understand about equanimity is that it is not indifference, because it is grounded in caring. In equanimity, we cultivate a calm mind in the face of life's ups and downs. It means opening our hearts and minds, not just to pleasant experiences, but to unpleasant experiences. Lama Yeshe beautifully expresses the essence of equanimity when he says, if you expect your life to be up and down, your mind will be very peaceful. And that is exactly what we find in the Loka Vipatti Sutta, which the Buddha gave us. It's a discourse about what is called the 8 winds. And they said that in life, we cannot escape from the 8 worldly conditions: gain and loss, fame and ill fame, praise and blame, happiness and sorrow. With the pandemic, we experience losses, we experience sorrow, and we even get blamed. But the only antidote to overcoming these 8 worldly conditions is to develop equanimity. So I've briefly touched on the 4 sublime states. So I'd like to conclude again with a very simple instruction which I learned from His Holiness the Dalai Lama, which talks about something we can use as our daily prayer. So each morning when we wake up, let us recite this short, simple prayer. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. That's loving kindness. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and its causes. That's compassion. May all sentient beings always be joyful. That's sympathetic joy. And may all sentient beings be in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. That's upekkha. Okay, so thank you very much for your patience listening to today's Dhamma talk. And may the teachings of the Buddha continue to soothe your anxieties and help you cultivate kindness and compassion for yourself and others along the way. And may all of you, including your loved ones, be well and happy. Thank you.